Hey everyone, welcome back to Chip Stock Investor. I'm Nick Rossolillo, and it is fourth quarter 2022 earnings season here, middle of January. Earnings season kicked off with one of the world's biggest and what I think is the world's most important manufacturing company, industrial giant Taiwan Semiconductor manufacturing. So in this video, I'm going to give some brief highlights on the financial numbers and then delve into what's going on at the business and some really big news on the semiconductor industry overall and where it's headed for 2023. Before continuing, let me remind you to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if this video is helpful as you do your own investment research and increase your knowledge of business and technology. We really appreciate the support as subscribing to the channel helps us continue putting out content like this. So I'll start here with the biggest headline numbers. Full year 2022 revenue came in at $75.9 billion in US dollars. TSM reports in Taiwanese dollars, but converting it to US dollars, $75.9 billion. Net income, $34.1 billion. Huge profit margins of 45%. And of course, Taiwan Semi pays a dividend, currently that dividend yielding about 2%. So that's where a lot of that cash goes. And of course, to bolster its own balance sheet, service its debt, and invest in new equipment to continue always developing new manufacturing processes for chip designers, everyone from Apple to NVIDIA, AMD, Marvell, Qualcomm, you name it. All of our favorite chip stocks are customers of Taiwan Semi here. Company had a fantastic 2022. For the fourth quarter of the year specifically, this is where things get interesting. Revenue was up 43% year over year in Taiwanese dollars. When factoring for the currency exchange rate into US dollars, that represented growth of 27% year over year. So we'll put a link to the video that we just published the other day on the strength of the US dollar, and that'll help explain that huge difference, 43% growth in revenue in Taiwanese dollars, but only 27% growth when converting it to US dollars. That revenue was $19.9 billion, net income $9.4 billion. So again, huge profit margins here, approaching 50% for Taiwan Semi. In all, a fantastic year. The company well ahead of its growth goals, which it has stated through 2026, it wants to average at least 15 to 20% growth in US dollars and maintain gross profit margins on products sold of at least 53%. So the company well ahead of that goal in 2022. Also notable here, to close out 2022, Taiwan Semi said it had nearly 51 billion in cash and short-term investments on balance, offset by debt of just $27.8 billion. So that's a huge difference from Intel, which, as we all know, has its eyes on chip manufacturing for other chip designers. This balance sheet is a big advantage Taiwan Semi has over Intel. Intel's balance sheet, by comparison, nearly $40 billion in debt and cash and short-term investments of just shy of 23 billion as of its last report. Taiwan Semi has a lot of headroom to just continue to outspend peers like Intel on research and development and new equipment to outfit its new fabs. Taiwan Semi in great shape here to kick off 2023. Moving on to outlook. This is where things get really interesting, because we are in the midst of a cyclical downturn for the chip industry, especially for chips used in consumer electronics. So especially PCs, laptops, and smartphones, ex-Apple, ex the iPhone, looking at some double-digit declines in the fourth quarter of 2022, and that should last into the first quarter of 2023, maybe even into the second quarter. So here is how that is affecting Taiwan Semi. The company said in Q1 2023, revenue in US dollars should be 16.7 to 17.5 billion. That obviously represents a sizable sequential decrease from the just reported fourth quarter, and as much as a 5% year-over-year decrease from Q1 2022, when revenue was $17.6 billion. Taiwan Semi also said profit margins will fall a bit as well, operating margin down to a range of 41.5% to 43.5%, compared to about 45.5% in Q1 2022. So the company still above its profit margin targets, but obviously growth hitting a bit of a slowdown, if not an all-out contraction here because of that fall in consumer spending on electronics. However, though the next 2 quarters could be bumpy, Taiwan Semi did reiterate some other calls other chip companies like Qualcomm, like Micron, and others have already stated. Taiwan Semi sees this drop in the semi market ending this summer of 2023, before returning to growth. Now, Taiwan Semi did say they expect the overall chip industry to decline roughly 3 to 4% for 2023. They think that they'll experience slight full year growth. So building on the record 2022 just a little bit, that's their expectation. Profit margins could take a little bit of a hit. So expect this overall, I think, to be a flattish year for Taiwan Semi. But good news, if you're looking to pick up chip stocks on the cheap, it looks like we are in the midst of the market bottoming out presently. So a little bit more detail on Taiwan Semi's actual operations. It looks like their 3 nanometer manufacturing production just ramped up at the very tail end of 2022. They're now fully ramping up production for the first half of this year. Those 3 nanometer advanced chips, it looks like, are fully booked by probably Apple. If not entirely booked out by Apple, probably most of it booked out by Apple for specifically their iPhone business. And then the second half of 2023, the next iteration of the 3 nanometer manufacturing node is also booked out, probably by other companies like NVIDIA, AMD, Qualcomm, and such. So you have, on one hand, Taiwan Semi's most advanced manufacturing node, 3 nanometer, ramping up this year. It's probably going to be a mid-single digit or high single digit percentage of their overall revenue, offset by some cyclical weakness in the 5 and 7 nanometer. So you have, on one hand, 3 nanometer ramping up, but 5 and 7 nanometer, which makes up a large bulk of Taiwan Semi's revenue right now, dipping through the first half of this year before beginning to rally. So we have a little chart here helping illustrate what's going on and why Taiwan Semi expects to overall have a decent year, while a lot of other chip companies experiencing some decline, at least through the first half of 2023. This is obviously great news for the semiconductor industry, and really, I think, for the economy overall, given how important semiconductors are, not just as building blocks of technology, but for the whole global economy. Taiwan Semi has its finger on the pulse of things. I think we can give a lot of credence to this outlook. And because markets are forward-looking, not backward-looking, we're more interested in what will happen, not what just happened. This is great news for chip stocks, and I think for the market overall, to hear Taiwan Semi reiterate this outlook for things to bottom out by the first half of 2023. So 2 things here. First, Is Taiwan Semi stock a buy? And second, what does that mean for chip stocks overall? Well, first, on valuation, Taiwan Semi stock currently trading for about 26 times free cash flow and just shy of 14 times price, trailing 12-month price to earnings as of this recording. I think those two metrics will start to converge a little bit this year and maybe meet in the middle. So I'm going to say on a forward basis, this stock trades for roughly, I think maybe 20 times earnings and roughly 20 times forward free cash flow. Obviously, if you think the chip industry overall is going to grow through the rest of this decade and beyond, I think this is a fair value to pay for Taiwan Semi, especially given the stock has fallen so hard in the last year, along with the bear market. A lot of that having to do with the market knowing this cyclical downturn for chips was in force. So if you're looking to bottom feed here, I think we're probably close to the bottom for Taiwan Semi. If you're looking for a great dividend stock to buy and forget about within the semiconductor space, I think this is actually the one that you probably want, not Intel. I wouldn't buy Intel for the dividend at this point, given the issues that they're continuing to work on. Taiwan Semi has a fortress balance sheet. I don't own this one, but that's just me personally. I'm not looking for dividend income at this stage in my life. My bet on chip manufacturing is ASML Holding, which we'll be covering here within the next few weeks after they report earnings. But Taiwan Semi, fantastic company. Although I will say, apparently Warren Buffett likes Taiwan Semiconductor stock, a recent addition to Berkshire Hathaway's portfolio. I do own Berkshire Hathaway, so via that holding, indirectly, I guess I am a Taiwan Semi shareholder. I'm content with that, though, for the time being. Now, I think the more interesting implications here are for the broader semiconductor market. Again, I think the next two or three earnings reports for most chip companies, fourth quarter of 2022, maybe through second quarter 2023, are probably going to show some ugly numbers. We know that, though, now. I think Taiwan Semi just indicated that, and that by the second half of 2023, the chip market overall will return to growth. So if you're playing the long game here, I think the long-term trend, growing importance of semiconductors through the end of the 2020s is still very much intact. Taiwan Semi indicating it has lots of demand for its next generation 3 nanometer chip manufacturing technology. And some of the top names in the business, NVIDIA, AMD, Qualcomm, Marvell, and so on, seeing the benefits of it and elevated demand for that next gen manufacturing node. Great news here. Again, I think we now have an end of sight to the cyclical downturn. And if you're looking for the most opportune times to buy chip stocks, like I am, right now, I think is the time to start nibbling at the very least. So that's the approach we're taking here at Chip Stock Investor. This earnings report, I think, adds some support to our belief that the semiconductor market will kind of lead the way higher out of the bear market of 2022, as a lot of emphasis is being placed around the world on chip making, on chip design, building resilience of supply chains for the most basic building blocks for technology and for a lot of other stuff that we rely on in the economy. Stay tuned for more on Taiwan Semiconductor. There was a lot of information to unpack on the company's earnings release and especially the quarterly earnings call that they just had. Be talking more about that. And of course, because it's earnings season, coverage of a lot of other semiconductor companies, computing technology names, and other related businesses to this incredibly important industry. Stay tuned. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Talk to you all again soon.